Hi guys, David here with another science update. So today the first article we're looking at is called Experiment Gone Awry Suggests Novel Way to Combat Hypoxia. And this is basically about a study where scientists were looking at trying to figure out suspended animation in mice. And what they ended up getting is actually some clues that may be important for stroke research. So the article says, in a lab in Massachusetts General Hospital, mice lie in cages in a state of hypothermic suspended animation induced by a low dose of hydrogen sulfide gas. These chemically incapacitated animals have aged less than normal, effectively experiencing a slowing of time. So I think this is a picture of the apparatus. It says, just sleeping, a mouse in a setup designed to induce suspended animation with hydrogen sulfide. So that's pretty intense, but the basic idea is that suspended animation could be useful for medical care. One reason is that if you have a terminally ill patient, you might be able to suspend them so that they don't die until you're able to acquire the specific medicine that they need, or maybe even, if it was really, really long-term suspended animation, invent a specific medicine that they might need. Of course, it's also a key feature of science fiction. Of course, in any story where humans are going from one star system to another star system, you pretty much need one or two things to be true. You need either warp travel, so the ability to exceed the speed of light, or you need the ability for people to go into a cold sleep, which is to say, a suspended animation that you see in many different movies. So what they were looking to do is attempt to extend the period of hydrogen sulfide-induced suspended animation in mice by continuously topping up the supply of gas in the brain. But what happened surprised the researchers. We thought that repeated hydrogen sulfide inhalation might prolong suspended animation in mice, so we tested that, and they found out this was not the case. Instead, the mice quickly developed tolerance. And what happened is that there's an enzyme in the brain called sulfide quinone oxidoreductase, or SQOR, which is normally found in only very low concentrations in the brain. And these levels were increasing, and this buildup basically allowed the animals to have a better tolerance to hydrogen sulfide, and they started to come out of the suspended animation despite the fact that they were getting dosed continuously. What's interesting about this is that normally when the brain is starved of oxygen or experiencing hypoxia, such as when a person is having a stroke, because that's a common feature of a stroke is losing oxygen in your brain, there's a buildup of hydrogen sulfide, and that actually starts interfering with the function of key cell apparatus in the brain. Specifically, the mitochondria within neurons start malfunctioning. But SQOR, this enzyme, was basically averting this harmful effect in the mice and keeping the hydrogen sulfide levels down. The implication of this is that there may be a connection between the amount of SQOR enzyme in a brain cell and its susceptibility to damage when undergoing hypoxia or lack of oxygen. So this connection between SQOR and the ability of an animal to survive hypoxic conditions was also verified by looking at a different type of rodent. Specifically, they looked at ground squirrels, lined ground squirrels, which are known to be very hypoxia tolerant, especially in the brain, because they live in burrows and are frequently exposed to low oxygen conditions. They looked at the brains of these animals and found that they had unusually high SQOR levels, suggesting that this is in fact a key mechanism for surviving hypoxic conditions. So they say, so the medical implication may be that if you could find a way to elevate SQOR levels in the brain of someone who was experiencing or perhaps is likely to experience a stroke, this may increase the likelihood that their brain cells don't undergo damage during an actual stroke. So this may not be directly applicable at the moment because they say still it's not feasible to inject SQOR into the human brain under conditions of oxygen deprivation, but just this insight may be important in terms of underscoring future treatment approaches. So maybe people who were deemed to be likely to have a stroke could take a daily supplement that would make sure that their SQR levels were elevated. That's just a thought. I don't know if that's feasible or not, but I thought that connection was really interesting, and I hope that it goes somewhere in terms of helping stroke patients. The second article that I want to talk about today is in the field of material science, and it says that scientists create material that can both move and block heat. This is about a material property called thermal anisotropy and how to enhance it. Anisotropy is where you have a material that has a certain property along one axis and a different property along a different axis. And so in the context of thermal anisotropy, what that means is if you have a material and you can picture a block of it, that means that it's very easy to move heat in this direction, but heat cannot move in this direction. In other words, in this direction, you would be a thermal conductor, you'd be conducting heat, and in this direction, you would be insulating. You would be an insulator, and heat would not move very easily. And one of the key applications for a material like this is that you can picture if you have a material that easily moves heat along one direction but blocks it in the other, you could make materials that were very, very good at funneling heat in specific patterns and directions. So the article says moving heat around where you want it to go, adding it to houses and hair dryers, removing it from car engines and refrigerators is one of the great challenges of engineering, right? So if you can move heat where you want it to go, that's a key aspect of many, many different products. And if you think about it, we have some situations where we want less heat, like a refrigerator, and we have other situations where we want more heat, like a hairdryer or a car engine. And then you have situations where you are generating heat, like an electronic chip, and you want to take the heat away from that. So this ability to move heat around is very much material dependent. And so, and it's also very much dependent on good anisotropic materials. So the article says that scientists at the University of Chicago have invented a new way to funnel heat around at the microscopic level. A thermal insulator made using an innovative technique. They stack ultra-thin layers of crystalline sheets on top of each other, but rotate each layer slightly, creating a material with atoms that are aligned in one direction but not the other. So if we look at the paper itself from Nature, we can get a visual of what this looks like. So you can see here in this first stacked image that they're looking at a layered material. So you have layers of atomic, a nice crystalline lattice, and they're stacked with each other. And in the first scenario, you can see that these little wavy arrows, that represents heat moving. Heat is very easily able to move within the layer, but also because the layers are so stacked and aligned and the atoms are right on top of each other, in the first scenario, you can also have heat moving down between the layers. So what they did is they slightly rotated these layers, and because there was now a mismatch between the atoms were not lined up as much between layers, they found that the heat would no longer propagate between layers. But because the atoms were all nicely lined up in this crystalline structure within a layer, it could still propagate within a layer. So now they made this material that had very, very strong thermal anisotropy. So in terms of the outlook of this, they said we expect interlayer rotation to be an effective and generalizable way to reduce the thermal conductivity between layers and potentially engineer anisotropic thermal properties in a variety of layered materials. So this could potentially be applied to all kinds of materials that exhibit that layered structure, like graphite and things like it. In terms of the implications for real-world applications, they said this capability could open doors to experiment with materials that have been too heat sensitive for engineers to use in electronics. Because the idea is if you could make this material that has conductivity in one direction and insulation in the other direction, you may be able to get a lot more efficient at essentially whisking away the heat from sensitive electronic components. Well, if you want to read more about this, I've included the links below. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you'll join me again in the future soon, and if you liked the video, please like and subscribe. Bye.